Chapter 1. The First Sounds of the Ancient World. When we think of musical instruments, we often picture things made with intention, crafted with care, shaped by hands, and played with meaning. But the earliest instruments were not crafted at all. They were found. Imagine the world tens of thousands of years ago. A world without cities, without written stories, without metal or glass or orchestras, just natural sound. The sigh of wind moving through narrow valleys, the rustling of leaves brushing against one another, the hollow thump of a fallen branch when someone stepped on it, or the soft, rhythmic splash of water hitting stone. These were the first instruments, even if people didn't call them that. Someone, perhaps sitting beside a small fire as night settled gently around them, may have picked up a smooth stone and tapped it against another, a soft, clacking rhythm, simple but comforting. Someone else may have blown across the top of a hollow reed and felt a faint vibration, almost like a whisper of breath. There were no lessons, no theories, no rules, just curiosity and the quiet desire to make the world sing back. This was the beginning. Small, peaceful experiments in a world much quieter than ours. If you imagine it, you might hear soft, ambient sounds now. A gentle breeze, the distant call of an animal settling for the night, the crackling of a campfire in the cool darkness. These moments were the earliest origin of everything that would come later. From great symphonies to humble folk songs to the quiet lullabies passed from parent to child. All of it began right there, in the simple pleasure of a sound repeated, a sound explored, a sound enjoyed. Chapter 2. The First Flutes. Bones that sang. Gently among the oldest instruments humans crafted intentionally are the bone flutes found in caves across Europe and Asia. If you imagine them, don't picture polished modern flutes or shiny metal tubes. Picture something small, gentle, and incredibly simple. A hollow bird bone, light as a whisper, with tiny holes carved carefully along its side. About 30 or 40,000 years ago, someone held one of these delicate bones and wondered what might happen if they shaped it just right. Maybe they used a stone knife and slowly, patiently carved little openings into the surface, not hurriedly, because everything in their world moved at a slower pace. When the flute was finished, it probably didn't sound like a strong, bright melody. Instead, imagine a soft, breathy tone, like wind slipping through a cave entrance, or the quiet hum of a distant bird, a gentle sound for a gentle world. These flutes might have been played in the dim, echoing space of a limestone cavern, where every note lingered a little longer before fading into silence. If you listen in your mind, you might hear that echo, soft, slow, and endlessly patient. Researchers today recreate these ancient flutes, and the sounds they make are strangely calming. Not sharp, not bold, but soothing, like something half-remembered. It's peaceful to imagine someone thousands of generations ago sitting near a cave entrance, legs tucked comfortably beneath them, playing a few quiet notes to themselves as the day slowly faded into dusk. Perhaps other members of their group rested nearby, watching the sky turn darker, the stars gradually appearing like scattered grains of light. The flute's notes carried softly through the air, not meant to entertain, but simply to exist, a fragile thread connecting person and world. This was music at its most ancient, simple, soft, and human. Chapter 3. Drums and heartbeats. Before melody, before harmony, before complex patterns or songs, there was rhythm. The heartbeat itself is often the first rhythm we ever know, and ancient humans would have felt the calming thud-thud of their own chest as they rested under the stars. So it's no surprise that one of the earliest crafted instruments was the drum. But early drums were not the bold, powerful ones we imagine today. They were small, simple, soft. Picture a frame made from a bent branch or a hollowed piece of wood. On top of it, stretched gently, was an animal skin left to dry in the warm sun until it tightened naturally. When someone tapped it, the sound was warm and earthy and familiar. Not loud, just enough to feel like an extension of the body's own quiet rhythm. A group might sit around a fire, tapping in soft patterns that matched footsteps, breathing, or the rustle of wind in tall grass. Rhythm in those early moments felt grounding. It brought people together in calm, unspoken unity. Imagine that sound now. A soft, steady heartbeat of the earth giving shape to the stillness of night. It's easy to picture small gatherings where nothing much was said, where people relaxed after a long day, listening to the quiet tapping of someone gently playing a drum. There were no performances, no audiences, just the quiet pleasure. Chapter 5. The rise of early civilizations and their instruments. As time moved slowly forward and small groups of people became larger communities, musical instruments evolved with them. Civilizations began to form in Mesopotamia's fertile valleys, along the slow, winding Nile, in the peaceful plains of ancient China, and later across India, Greece, and Rome. But even as cultures became more complex, music remained gently woven into the rhythms of daily life. Mesopotamia, harps and soft strings. In the quiet lands between the Tigris and Euphrates, people shaped delicate harps with curved wooden frames and strings made from gut. These were not grand concert harps, but small, portable ones that could be held in the lap. The sound was light, almost shimmering, like sunlit water. People played them softly while reciting stories or poems, or simply to create gentle background music during evenings at home. Egypt, flutes. Beside the Nile, along the Nile River, musicians played reed flutes with warm, breathy tones. Imagine standing near the water at sunset, with the ancient sky shifting from gold to deep purple. Someone sits nearby playing a flute so softly that it blends with the sighing reeds and the distant splash of water birds settling in. Music was part of daily life, not loud, not forceful, but companion-like. China, bells, qin, and soft ritual. Sounds in early China, musical instruments developed with incredible refinement. Bells shaped from bronze produced gentle, lingering tones, like distant chimes carried by the wind. The guqin, a long wooden instrument with soft strings, was played privately, often alone, as a form of meditation. Its notes are very quiet, almost like thinking made audible. India. Early forms of the veena. In India, early veenas emerged. String instruments with calming, resonant tones used in spiritual and poetic traditions. Their sound was warm, deep, and soothing. Loose, meandering melodies would drift through quiet courtyards as dusk settled in. Across all these civilizations, music was not a performance, but a companion to daily life, a soft presence that brought peace to homes and hearts. Chapter 6. String Instruments and the Joy of Resonance. Strings brought something new to the world of sound. Before strings, music was mostly breath and rhythm. But with strings came resonance, notes that lingered, ringing softly even after the musician stopped playing. People discovered early on that when a string is plucked or bowed, vibrations move through the wood, creating a warm, comforting tone. The earliest string instruments were simple: a curved stick, a single string, and a small resonating bowl or gourd. But even these simple tools could create long, peaceful tones that felt almost meditative. Imagine a quiet room lit by a small oil lamp, a person seated comfortably with such an instrument in their lap. Their fingers gently pluck the string again and again, letting each note fade naturally before starting the next. No hurry, no complexity, just sound, slow, warm, and deeply human. Over time, string instruments became more refined. Small harps grew more curved and elegant. Lutes developed gentle, rounded bodies that resonated softly against the chest. Instruments gained multiple strings, allowing for chords, clusters of soft tones like little blankets of sound. For thousands of years, string instruments remained central to peaceful, reflective music. Their voices were perfect for evenings, for storytelling, for quiet gatherings, and for helping people rest. And even today, if you listen to a soft harp or lute recording in the background while you sleep, you're hearing something that connects directly to these ancient Mohm Chapter 7, the quiet birth of melody. There came a time when music shifted from simple tones to something more intentional. Melody. Not fast, not dramatic, but gentle lines of notes that flowed like streams moving slowly downhill. Picture someone experimenting, plucking one string, then another, listening to how the pitches rose and fell. This slow exploration helped humans discover scales, ordered sets of notes that felt natural and calming. Different cultures had different scales, but many of them were peaceful, built around intervals that sounded like soft sighs or drifting thoughts. Melody brought a new dimension to life, a way to express feelings without speaking, a quiet sadness, a gentle hope, a sense of peace. As evenings settled over small homes and lamps were lit one by one, music now could tell stories. Not exciting ones, but slow, reflective tales that helped people unwind after long days of work and travel. And as melodies grew, so did the instruments themselves. Flutes became more refined, with holes placed carefully to allow smooth transitions. String instruments gained more strings to make gentle musical patterns. Early horns and pipes were shaped to produce soft, mellow tones that carried well-a.
If you close your eyes, you might imagine a world untouched by electricity, a world where the sun's setting left people surrounded by soft, natural darkness. Before candles ever flickered, humankind lit the night with small fires, glowing coals, and simple oil lamps made from stone or clay. But eventually, people discovered something new, something portable, a tiny light that could travel with them. Archaeologists believe that the earliest forms of candles appeared over 5,000 years ago. Not exactly the smooth wax pillars we use today, but rather sticks dipped in melted fat or reeds soaked in thick, oily substances. You can imagine someone in an early village carefully twisting fibers together, dipping them into animal fat, and watching the materials soak it up like a sponge. These simple rush lights, as they would later be called, cast a dim, wavering glow, just enough to push back the darkness, just enough to accompany a quiet night. They weren't fancy, and they probably didn't smell very pleasant, but to the people who used them, they were a small miracle, a light that could be carried from room to room. In these very early times, candle making was not yet a craft. It was a necessity, done by ordinary hands in ordinary homes, a slow, practical task performed at the end of the day, a moment of calm in lives filled with work and weather and the rhythms of the seasons. And even then, even in their earliest form, candles brought with them a sense of comfort, a sense of stillness, a sense that night did not have to be a curtain of darkness, but could instead be something warm and gentle. Ancient Egypt and the first waxes. Let's drift to ancient Egypt now, a land warmed by sunlight, where the Nile moved slowly across the landscape and papyrus reeds swayed along the riverbanks. The Egyptians were clever people, skilled at turning nature's gifts into useful and beautiful things. Among these innovations was the early use of beeswax. Beeswax candles were not common. They were precious, reserved for the wealthy, the temples, and important ceremonies. But they were smooth, clean-burning, and carried the soft, sweet scent of honey. Imagine an Egyptian scribe working in a quiet chamber. The walls around him are decorated with gentle paintings in earthy reds, soft yellows, and muted blues. A small beeswax candle rests inside a carved metal holder. Its flame dances lightly as he writes on a papyrus scroll, the golden light flickering across his careful handwriting. Candles were not just useful in Egypt, they were symbolic. Some were shaped for rituals, some left as offerings, and some used during the long, silent hours when the desert night stretched cool and wide across the land. But most homes still relied on oil lamps. Candles were special, tiny luxuries, simple yet meaningful. And in their warm glow, we see the beginning of candle making as a craft, rather than a chore. Home and the tally of time. Our story drifts now to ancient Rome, a bustling world of paved roads, echoing public baths, ornate villas, and a rhythm of daily life that flowed like an orderly river. The Romans were masters at turning everyday tasks into organized systems. They built aqueducts, invented concrete, and created vast networks of trade. And yes, they made candles too. Roman candles were often crafted from tallow, a type of rendered animal fat that produced a strong flame, though not always a pleasant smell. They were used in homes, bathhouses, and especially by travelers moving along Roman roads after sunset. But the Romans also did something remarkable. They used candles as timekeepers. Some candles were made with evenly spaced marks running down their sides. As the wax melted past each mark, it signaled the passing of a specific period of time. This gentle, predictable burn helped priests keep track of rituals and helped officials measure hours in a world before clocks. Picture a Roman official working late into the evening. A tall candle stands on his desk, its surface etched with delicate notches. He glances at the flame from time to time, seeing how far it has traveled and knowing exactly how much of the night remains. There's something quietly beautiful about using a candle to measure time. It feels softer than the ticking of a modern clock, more human, more patient. A reminder that life once moved to the slow rhythm of melting wax. China and the glow of innovation. Far across the world, in ancient China, candle making developed in its own unique way. Chinese candle makers used ingredients that reflected the land around them. Insects and seeds pressed and shaped into wax-like substances that could support a flame. Some candles were even made from the seeds of the tallow tree, producing a clean, bright light that became popular in households and temples. The Chinese also created paper wrap, China and the glow of innovation. Far across the world, in ancient China, candle making developed in its own unique way. Chinese candle makers used ingredients that reflected the land around them, insects and seeds, pressed and shaped into wax-like substances that could support a flame. Some candles were even made from the seeds of the tallow tree, producing a clean, bright light that became popular in households and temples. The Chinese also created paper-wrapped candles, which were surprisingly elegant. Thin, delicate layers of paper surrounded a central core of wax or fat, making the candles lightweight and visually beautiful. And then there were dragon candles, vibrant, colorful, and carved into swirling shapes used for celebrations and rituals. But even these ornate designs retained the same gentle glow that has always made candlelight so comforting. Imagine walking through a traditional Chinese home. In the late evening, the air is warm. The scent of wood and soft incense floats quietly through the rooms. Candles burn behind silk screens, their light diffused into a soft, milky glow that spreads peacefully across the walls. Candlelight here isn't harsh or demanding. It's gentle, welcoming, a quiet companion perfect for evenings of storytelling, tea drinking, or simply watching the night settle over the world. China and the glow of innovation. Far across the world, in ancient China, candle making developed in its own unique way. Chinese candle makers used ingredients that reflected the land around them, insects and seeds, pressed and shaped into wax-like substances that could support a flame. Some candles were even made from the seeds of the tallow tree, producing a clean, bright light that became popular in households and temples. The Chinese also created paper-wrapped candles, which were surprisingly elegant. Thin, delicate layers of paper surrounded a central core of wax or fat, making the candles lightweight and visually beautiful. And then there were dragon candles, vibrant, colorful, and carved into swirling shapes, used for celebrations and rituals. But even these ornate designs retained the same gentle glow that has always made candlelight so comforting. Imagine walking through a traditional Chinese home in the late evening. The air is warm. The scent of wood and soft incense floats quietly through the rooms. Candles burn behind silk screens, their light diffused into a soft, milky glow that spreads peacefully across the walls. Candlelight here isn't harsh or demanding. It's gentle, welcoming, a quiet companion, perfect for evenings of storytelling, tea drinking, or simply watching the night settle over the world. Medieval glows and the quiet candle makers. As we drift forward through time, the ancient world gradually softens, and we find ourselves stepping gently into the long stretch of the Middle Ages. This was a time when nights felt deeper, quieter, and perhaps a little colder. Homes were small, windows shuttered, and the world outside often grew still once the sun dipped below the horizon. Inside these medieval homes and workshops, candles played a humble but important role. Not dramatic, just steady companions of the night. Let's settle in, wrap ourselves in a little imaginary warmth, and wander through the soft glow of medieval candle making, the work of tallow. Humble, simple, everyday. In most medieval villages, candles were not glamorous objects. They were made of tallow, a rendered animal fat that was easy to obtain and practical for everyday use. Picture a small medieval cottage, stone walls, low timber beams, and the scent of wood smoke lingering in the air. About once a month, the family would gather to prepare their tallow for the season. Tallow making was a slow, steady process. The fat was melted down in a large pot, stirred gently over a small fire until it became thin and workable. Then, lengths of twisted fiber, often hemp or flax, were dipped into the mixture, one after another. Dip, lift, cool, dip, lift, cool. Each dip added a thin new layer that slowly widened the candle's shape. It took many dips and a great deal of patience to make a set of simple household candles. You can imagine the quiet of the room, the warm crackle of the fire, the subtle smell of melting tallow, and the soft glow of sunlight slipping through the cottage window. Tallow candles burned with a bit of smoke, and they sometimes flickered wildly when the wind sneaked in through cracks in the walls. But they were reliable, and they lit the way for countless evenings, simple meals, quiet prayers, and long winter nights spent mending clothes or telling soft stories. There is something strangely comforting in these humble candles.
Chapter 1. A quiet morning begins. Imagine the first hint of morning light touching the rooftops of a small European village. The sun is still hidden behind distant hills, and everything is wrapped in a bluish-gray calm. There are no engines, no buzzing phones, nothing humming in the background, only the softest sounds of dawn. Maybe a distant rooster calls once, but even that fades gently like a sound cushioned by fog. Homes in this century are simple, made of timber, wattle, daub, or stone where fortunes allow, and at the heart of nearly every one of them there is a hearth, the central spot for warmth, light, and food. Cooking begins early, but quietly. No one bangs pans, no one opens a refrigerator door, no stovetops clicking to ignite. Instead, someone kneels beside the ashes from the night before, searching with patient fingers for the faint glow of a surviving ember. If they find even the smallest spark, they breathe life into it with slow, gentle puffs, the kind that create barely there wisps of smoke curling upward into the cool morning air. If they don't, they strike flint against steel with careful, practiced movements, not loud, not sharp, just the soft tap of stone meeting metal. The first flames of the day are always coaxed into existence with tenderness. The fire grows, but slowly. It crackles softly, no louder than the rustle of a turning page. With it, the kitchen comes alive in the calmest possible way. Chapter 2. The simple tools of quiet. Cooking. A 14th century kitchen doesn't have the clutter of modern life, but what it does have feels grounded, earthy, and warm. There are wooden bowls carved smooth by years of use, clay pots with small imperfections from being hand-shaped and sun-dried, iron cauldrons, heavy but steady, hung over the hearth or set beside the coals. Everything is made from the earth around them, wood from nearby forests, clay from the riverbanks, iron from local forges. The spoons are wooden, the ladles are wooden, and even the spatulas are shaped from long planks that someone sanded by hand. These tools do not clatter, they do not scrape loudly, they make only soft taps, muted stirring, and the gentle whisper of ingredients being mixed. Because kitchens weren't just workplaces, they were places people gathered for warmth, conversation, and quiet companionship. The soundscape is peaceful, the tiny crackles of the fire, the slide of a wooden ladle, the faint bubbling of a pot, the soft thud of kneading dough, the occasional sigh of wind through a shutter, maybe a church bell ringing far away. Everything feels slow and soothing. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is sharp. It's the kind of kitchen where you can almost feel yourself relax just by imagining it. Chapter 3. What people cooked. Not every household had the same meals. A farmer's table looked different from a merchant's table, and a merchant's table different from a noble's. But even with these differences, the cooking techniques were surprisingly similar. Thick soups and pottages. Across Europe, the most common meal of all was something called pottage, a thick stew-like dish made from whatever was available: barley, peas, root vegetables, sometimes herbs, and on special days, bits of meat. It simmered quietly for hours and hours, slowly becoming richer as time passed. The longer it cooked, the better it tasted. And because it could sit over low heat all day, it filled the home with a gentle, warm smell that wrapped around everyone inside like a blanket. Bread was essential. Most homes baked simple, rustic loaves made from rye, barley, or wheat, depending on the region. The process was slow and soothing. Flour, water, a pinch of yeast from yesterday's dough, and tired hands kneading with rhythmic, steady movements. Dough didn't rush. It rose when it wanted to rise, not a minute sooner. People simply learned patience. Vegetables and herbs gardens provided leeks, onions, cabbage, spinach-like greens, and herbs. People gathered herbs at dawn when their scents were strongest: mint, sage, thyme, parsley, marjoram. Nothing exotic, nothing dramatic, just fresh, simple flavors prepared with care. Meat wasn't eaten often among the poor, but when it was treated with honor. Cooked slowly, gently, quietly. Nobles enjoyed more, but even in their kitchens, the cooking was slow and deliberate. Roasts turned on spits with soft creaks of wood. Broths simmered for hours into golden clarity. Herbs floated like tiny boats on the surface as the steam drifted upward in slow, dreamy spirals. Chapter 4. The hearth at the center of life. The hearth was everything. There were no separate kitchens. In most homes, the cooking fire was in the center of the main room. It warmed the house, lit the home, and cooked the food all at once. The light it cast flickered softly on the walls, shadows dancing slowly like sleepy figures moving in a dream. Families gathered around it to talk quietly, repair tools, mend clothes, and tell stories. The fire was their companion. Its crackle was their background music. Its warmth was their comfort. And when pots hung over the flames or sat nestled beside the coals, the entire space felt like a living, breathing cradle of calm activity. The way people cooked reflected the way they lived, slowly, simply, with a deep understanding of patience. Chapter 5. Quiet techniques of medieval cooking. Most meals didn't require precision. There were no timers, no thermometers, no measuring spoons. Everything was done by feel, by instinct, and by memory. Simmering over coals were preferred over flames for most dishes. They gave consistent, gentle heat that allowed soups and stews to blur softly between bubbling and resting. Baking in communal ovens. Many villages had a shared oven, not for loud crowds, but for a calm routine. People arrived with dough tucked into baskets, covered with cloths that smelled faintly of flour. There was no rush. Everyone waited their turn, talking in hushed voices as the fire popped softly inside the stone chamber, roasting slowly. Large cuts of meat turned on simple wooden spits that rotated gently by hand or a small crank. The drippings hissed quietly as they fell onto coals, and the aroma filled the space in soft waves. Boiling and steeping herbs were steeped not with boiling water, but with warm, comforting heat that preserved their fragrance. On cold days, steam curled slowly through the room, creating a misty haze that felt almost magical. Chapter 6. Food as community. Food wasn't just nourishment. It was connection. Neighbors exchanged ingredients the way we might exchange messages. Bread for herbs, vegetables for a bit of cheese. Everything flowed quietly between households. Meals were rarely eaten alone. Even poor families invited neighbors when they could. A pot of pottage could always stretch a little more. The sense of community was warm and understated, like a shared breath on a cold morning. Chapter 7. Nightfall in a medieval kitchen. As evening arrived, the fire softened. Flames sank low. Coals glowed like distant stars, and shadows deepened across the room. People sat around the hearth in peaceful conversation. Voices calm, movements slow. Some mended clothing, some sharpened knives, some simply sat in silence, letting the warmth soothe them after a long day. Meals at night were simple: a final bowl of stew, a piece of bread, perhaps a bit of cheese, no clatter, no bright electric lights, no rushing to finish. Just quiet moments shared in the glow of a fading fire. Eventually the embers dimmed, the room cooled, and families drifted to sleep in the stillness that only the medieval night could bring. Chapter 8. The enduring stillness. What makes 14th century cooking so soothing to imagine isn't just the ingredients or the tools or the recipes. It's the pace. A pace that moves like a slow river, steady and unrushed. A pace that reminds us that food once took time and that the world was quieter for it. When we imagine these kitchens, we imagine the glow of coals, the smell of warm bread, the soft tap of wooden tools, the faint bubbling of a pot, the distant bell from a village church, the hum of family life, the sigh of wind through old shutters, all of it working together to create a kind of gentle music, a lullaby of daily life. And in that quiet rhythm, there is comfort, there is calm, there is rest. Chapter 1. The first meal of the day. In the 14th century, people didn't wake up to alarms. They woke up to the softness of dawn light filtering through tiny windows, or the gentle call of roosters echoing across quiet fields. Most families didn't eat breakfast right away. Instead, they eased into the morning, tending to early chores, warming the hearth, or fetching water. When they did finally eat, it was simple, quiet, almost humble. The morning meal, not quite breakfast as we know it, but a soft first bite of the day, often consisted of a piece of yesterday's bread, a bowl of warm pottage left simmering overnight, maybe some cheese, sometimes ale or watered wine on lucky days, a bit of fresh milk. The home would be cool in the mornings, the air still holding the chill of night. The first spoonful of warm food felt comforting, steadying, a gentle reminder that the day had begun. People didn't eat in a rush. They ate quietly, sometimes in silence, sometimes with soft conversation in low, sleepy voices. Imagine the faint crackle of embers, the soft clink of a wooden spoon, and a slow breath of morning air moving through a half-open door. It was a peaceful way to begin the day.
Marking the framework. Once the beams are ready, the carpenters begin laying out the structure. Using charcoal sticks, they draw precise but simple lines along the timber. These marks guide the cutting of notches, the joints where beams will fit together without nails, without glue, just wood meeting wood. This method is ancient and deeply elegant. Each notch is carved by hand, using chisels and mallets. The mallet taps are soft and regular. Tock, tock, tock. The sound blends beautifully with the breeze, creating a kind of slow, earthy music. The air smells of fresh cut wood and warm soil. The entire process feels like preparing a puzzle, one made not of cardboard, but of patient craftsmanship. Raising the first frame. As the sun begins to lower, the carpenters lift the first upright beams. Others from the village come to help, not because it's difficult, but because it's a shared moment. They raise one beam, then another, fitting them into the foundation stones that have been laid earlier. The beams stand tall, casting long shadows as wind hums softly through the clearing. There is a collective pause, a tiny, quiet celebration. A home has begun to rise, the quiet work of joining the bones of the house. With the first tall beams standing, the carpenters begin shaping the rest of the wooden skeleton. They move with calm familiarity, as if each of them has built dozens of houses and has absorbed the rhythm of the craft into their breath. They bring forward the horizontal beams, the long, carefully smoothed timbers that will connect the uprights and form the first sturdy frame of the house. Before any wood is lifted, the carpenters pause, checking the notches they carved earlier. They trace each joint with their fingertips, making sure the lines are clean and the angles are true. Then, with steady hands and long, even breaths, they lift the beams up, not hurriedly, not forcefully, just smoothly, the same way one might lift a sleeping child from a warm bed. A few workers stand on simple wooden ladders, guiding each beam gently into place. When the pieces meet, wood touches wood with a soft, satisfying sound. More a whisper than a knock. A pause, a breath, a nod. The house is beginning to feel real. Imagining soft ambient sound. If you'd like, you can imagine a faint wind passing between the rising beams, making a gentle, low hum that blends with distant birdsong and the comforting thud of mallets shaping joints. No loud sounds, no sharp bangs, just patient wooden music fitting the crossbeams. The next part is delicate. The crossbeams that hold the whole structure steady. These beams are shorter and somewhat heavier, cut from the densest parts of the tree. They are the quiet strength of the home. The carpenters insert each one into carefully carved joints at the tops of the uprights. A few taps from a wooden mallet tighten the fit. Talk, 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 rhythmic and muted. Once they are in place, the entire frame stands more firmly, as if the skeleton of the house has finally taken its first slow breath. Standing nearby, you might see the shadows shifting through the open beams like soft, wandering brushstrokes of sunlight. Children pause to watch, eyes wide, curious about the slow magic of houses growing from trees. A quiet, slow beginning. Take a moment. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your breath soften. And imagine yourself sinking gently into a comfortable space, somewhere calm, delightfully calm, where time moves in long, unhurried waves, like a slow tide brushing a quiet shore. Tonight, we're going on a very gentle historical wander. Nothing dramatic, nothing intense. Just a soft, comforting story about how ancient carpenters built wooden homes. In a world where days moved slowly, tools were simple, and life was shaped by the rhythm of wood, wind, and work. You can imagine, if you like, a faint breeze brushing past, carrying the scent of fresh timber and the soothing warmth of sunlight resting on old wood. You might hear distant birds, the soft crackling of a hearth fire somewhere far away, or the muted ring of a hammer tapping from across a field. This is the world you're about to walk into, a world of slow craft, patient hands, and wooden homes rising gently from earth and forest. Let's begin. Stepping into an ancient morning picture, an ancient settlement long before cities rose to the sky, in a time when people built with what they had around them: stone, clay, and, more than anything, wood. The sun is barely waking. A pale, golden wash stretches across the horizon, quietly revealing the outlines of wooden beams, small cottages, and the familiar shapes of distant trees. The village is still, except for a few wisps of smoke curling upward from early morning fires. Somewhere, a wooden ladle stirs a pot. Somewhere else, the soft bleat of an animal floats into the dawn. But near the edge of the settlement, where the forest begins, you notice a group of carpenters walking slowly along a dirt path. They carry simple tools, bronze or iron axes, adzes, The thatching begins. As the midday sun shifts slightly westward, villagers start bringing bundles of straw, reeds, or long grasses, materials gathered over months and dried carefully in the open air. These bundles are soft to the touch, yet strong enough to shield a home from rain, wind, and snow. Ancient roofs were not silent constructions of shingles and nails. They were woven, layer by layer, like blankets, placed gently over the bones of the house. The carpenters begin at the bottom edge of the roof, tying the first bundles onto the laths. Their movements are unhurried, not pulling too tight, not too loose, just steady and mindful. Each handful of straw lies neatly against the last, like strands of hair brushed into smooth alignment. As the workers move upward, the roof develops a soft, golden texture, shimmering gently under the sun. From a distance, the house begins to look complete, as though it could already shelter someone from a sudden rain. The scent of dried straw drifts into the air, faint, sweet, and nostalgic, like a memory of summer fields. Imaginary ambient sound. If you'd like, imagine the sound of straw brushing wood, a whispering, rustling lullaby. Nothing harsh, nothing hurried, just a soft rhythm that makes your breathing slower. Closing the walls. Once the roof is secured, the carpenters turn their attention to the walls. The frame stands ready, waiting like open arms to be filled. Walls in ancient wooden homes were often made from upright planks or woven wattle panels, thin branches intertwined like baskets, and then covered with a mixture of clay, sand, and straw. The first stage is gentle weaving, thin rods of wood bent into pattern after pattern, horizontal lines crossing vertical ones with patient repetition. There is something deeply peaceful about this weaving, a quiet reminder that even walls begin with softness. Once the framework is woven, the villagers bring clay mixtures, cool, heavy, and slightly grainy. They press the clay into the gaps with open palms, smoothing the surface until it resembles soft earth after rain. The walls darken slightly as they dry, turning into sturdy panels that hold warmth in winter and keep rooms cool in summer. Nothing about them is perfect. The lines are not laser straight. The texture is uneven. But ancient homes were never meant to be flawless. They were meant to be alive, and living walls breathe with the seasons. Inside the growing home, as more panels are filled, the interior of the home becomes defined. The light changes, filtering through doorways and unfinished windows. Dust dances softly in sunbeams. Inside, the spaces feel intimate. Rooms not measured by technology, but by instinct and tradition. The carpenters test the floorboards, walking slowly across them, noticing how the wood responds. A hollow tone here, a firmer resonance there, each sound telling a story. They adjust a peg, plane a corner, smooth a splinter, taking their time, never forcing anything. Ancient carpentry was not about efficiency. It was about relationship between tool and wood, between craft and home, between hands and future memories. Carving the doorway. The doorway is more than an entrance. It is a threshold, a symbolic crossing from the wild landscape outside into a place of shelter, warmth, and belonging. Carpenters spend extra care here. They choose a beam that has the straightest grain, one that feels as though nature has already prepared it for this role. They carve a lintel, a horizontal beam above the door, smoothing it until it glows softly under their tools. Some cultures added simple patterns, waves, spirals, or quiet geometric lines. Not bold symbols, just small whispers of identity, like signatures made of wood. The doorway is fitted into the wall with soft taps and careful checks. When complete, the house suddenly feels more real, as though it has opened its eyes for the first time. Windows, small and thoughtful. Ancient windows were rarely large. Glass was rare, costly, or unknown. Instead, small openings were placed where light was needed, high enough to keep warmth inside but low enough to let breezes pass through. Some windows had shutters of wood that could be swung open with a quiet creak. Others were simply gaps that let in whatever air the day offered. These windows make the house feel humble, but comfort lives not in size, only in intention. Interior supports and beams. Inside the house, thicker posts stand at intervals, supporting the rafters above. Each post is smoothed and shaped to sit snugly in its foundation stones. The carpenters sometimes pause after placing a support beam, resting a palm against it, as though greeting a living friend. In that touch is gratitude for the forest, for the tree, for the wood, that now stands in its new purpose. It is a quiet ritual few speak of aloud, but all understand. A pause in the afternoon. The work site settles into an afternoon calm. Evening approaches again. Gradually, the sunlight thins, turning golden, then amber, then a cool blue at the edges. The house now looks almost complete. Roof fully thatched, walls filled, door framed. It stands quietly among the grass, as though it has always been there, waiting for these hands to reveal it. The workers tidy the area. They gather tools, stack unused timber, sweep shavings into piles. The evening feels calm and earned, like the last soft pages of a long, peaceful chapter. Once again, a small fire is lit. Flames flicker gently, casting orange patterns on the new wooden walls. The villagers murmur soft good nights as they drift homeward, walking slowly along familiar paths. The house remains behind, silent but awake, taking its place among the memories of the day. The days move gently on, and as the sun rises over the calm settlement, the wooden frame now stands like a silent promise against the sky. The carpenters, rested and thoughtful, return to their work with the same patient rhythm as before. They never hurry, for rushing is the enemy of the craft. In their world, time behaves differently. It stretches like a long and peaceful road, meant to be walked at whatever pace the day allows. The wooden skeleton of the home looks almost like a great wooden creature at rest, still, deliberate, and waiting. The beams meet one another in joints, carved with quiet precision. Some are dovetailed, like interlaced fingers. Others are tenons fitted snugly into mortises, hidden away, yet holding the weight of the entire house. There are no nails here. Iron is rare, and where it exists, it must be smelted and shaped, a costly effort reserved for tools, hinges, and locks. Instead, the carpenters use wooden pegs, carefully shaved by hand, each one tapped gently into place with a wooden mallet, producing a muffled sound, soft, steady, hollow, like a distant heartbeat echoing through the frame. Each peg is made slightly larger than the opening it will enter. The carpenter knows that wood swells with moisture and contracts again. One day, years from now, in the chill of winter, or during a stormy night, the house must still hold firm. So the peg is driven with care, wedged into place until it fits just right. The mallet taps continue, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. The villagers passing by might glance at the growing structure. They do not marvel, because such dwellings are familiar. Yet there is a quiet respect, an unspoken understanding that homes like these are not built in days, but in generations of knowledge. For the carpenters, routine is comfort. Their hands move instinctively, guided by memory, as if each motion has been handed down not just by teachers, but by time itself. There is a soft certainty in everything they do. No second guessing, no uncertainty, only the task, and the day, and the wood. A light breeze passes across the worksite, carrying a hint of sawdust on the air. The scent is sweet and clean, and somewhere a bird sings 3 notes, pauses, and then sings again. If one were sitting nearby, perhaps on a stump or along the edge of the clearing, they might close their eyes and listen, and find they are drifting. The carpenters, though busy, are not noisy. They speak rarely, and when they do, their voices are low and even, like murmurs carried by the wind. A simple phrase such as, "Bring that beam," becomes almost meditative. In this world, silence isn't empty. It is full of wood fibers being shaped, of hands guiding surfaces smooth, of the whisper of shavings curling away like thin ribbons. Soon, boards are laid carefully across the frame to create the floors. Each one is tested. The carpenters press a foot here, a hand there. The wood creaks softly, but only in greeting. When finished, the floor will not groan or sway. It will welcome footsteps, light or heavy, for years. Above, rafters begin to appear. These angled beams will hold the roof, and once they are in place, the shape of the home becomes clear, simple, strong, and peaceful. The rafters are lifted slowly, sometimes by ropes, sometimes by many hands acting together. There is no rush. Each movement is prepared and understood long before it begins. The home grows taller, but the sounds remain quiet. Soft tapping, low murmurs, beams sliding into place, birds singing, the wind gently brushing the walls that do not yet exist. Everything feels safe here, predictable, calm. And as the light slants through unfinished beams, dust floaters drift lazily in the air, gold specks suspended like tiny lanterns, hovering in a place where past, present, and future gather in stillness. With the rafters now in place, the structure begins to resemble not merely a skeleton, but a house with a gentle soul. The carpenters stand back for a quiet moment, not out of pride, but to let their eyes rest upon the shape of their work. In their minds, they are already thinking ahead of roofs and walls, of warmth and shelter, of a place where families. The carpenters begin by laying long, straight beams across the rafters. These beams will support the future layers, whether of thatch, wooden shingles, or hand-split tiles. Each beam is hoisted carefully, guided into its notch, where it rests like a bowed limb settling into a cradle. The sound of wood touching wood is soft, almost like a sigh. Sometimes, if you listened closely, you might imagine the house breathing. Once the beams are in place, they bring bundles of straw, reeds, or wooden shingles, depending on what the land provides. No two regions built in exactly the same way. In places where rivers flowed wide, reeds were plentiful. In forests, wooden shingles were split by hand, one by one, from seasoned logs. Each choice shaped not just the roof, but the sound of rain that would someday fall upon it. Thatching, when used, is almost poetic in its simplicity. The carpenters lay bundles of reeds like strands of hair, layering them thickly, overlapping them so rain will run off like water over feathers. The reeds rustle quietly as they are arranged, producing a soft, whispering sound like dry grass stirred by gentle wind. It is the kind of sound that makes the mind relax, the kind that invites slow breathing and steady thoughts. Wooden shingles, on the other hand, are placed like scales, one overlapping the next, each tapped into place with calm certainty. Not a hurried tap, nor a harsh one. A gentle knock, firm, confident, but never impatient. The rhythm of this tapping is predictable, almost hypnotic. If someone were resting nearby, perhaps leaning against a tree, listening with eyes half closed, they might feel sleep tug at them like a soft blanket. Soon enough, the roof is finished. From afar, it looks like a quiet hill resting comfortably above the frame of the house. Now come the walls. Walls are more than barriers. In ancient times, they were memory keepers. They held warmth in winter, shadows in summer, and stories in every season. Some walls were made from wooden planks, fitted side by side, smoothed by hand. Others used wattle and daub, thin branches woven like baskets, then coated with clay, straw, and earth. This clay mixture, kneaded patiently, feels cool to the touch. Carpenters press it onto the woven branches with the flat of their palms. The sound is soft and sticky, more of a hush than a noise. Every handful spreads like butter over bread. It dries slowly, turning into a strong and comforting surface. The smell of wet earth is everywhere. It mingles with the scent of fresh-cut wood and straw. Together, they create something warm and ancient, a fragrance that feels like belonging. There are pauses throughout the day, but the pauses are not interruptions. They are part of the rhythm. The carpenters sit for a while, sip water from wooden cups, brush sawdust from their clothes, and say little. Their silence is companionable, comfortable. It wraps itself around the work, as if silence itself were another material used in building. As the sun glides across the sky, shadows slide along the beams and walls. Nothing moves quickly, nothing startles. The house rises without haste, as though it always knew it would be built and only waited for the right hands, the right day, the right breeze to watch it form. By late afternoon, the walls are nearly done. The house has shape, presence, and dignity. It is no longer a collection of timber. It is becoming a home, a place where footsteps will be heard, but never loudly, where wind will pass around corners, sighing softly, where fires will crackle in the hearth, offering warmth to those who rest beside it. The carpenters look upon their work and nod, not in celebration, nor in triumph, but in quiet acknowledgement. The house is not finished, but it is well on its way, like a thought half-formed, waiting only for a few more words before settling into meaning. And as evening settles gently over the land, everything slows even further, until motion itself feels like a memory. The house now stands with its roof and walls embracing the space within, yet it remains hollow, waiting, like an empty shell. It needs something more before it becomes a place where lives can unfold gently across the days. The carpenters understand this well. The next steps are quieter still, less visible from afar, but deeply important. They will build not just structure, but comfort. Inside the home, the first task is the floor. Some ancient homes had packed earth floors, smooth, firm and surprisingly warm. Others used timber planks, fitted carefully so that no space was left for wind to slip through. The carpenters choose their materials based on the land's generosity. Today, timber is plentiful, and the carpenters bring wide boards, polished by hand. Each plank is measured and trimmed, so it fits like a puzzle piece. They set the boards down gently, pressing them snugly against one another. There is no hammering here, only quiet tapping, nudging, and adjusting. The wood releases a soft, woody scent when rubbed. If one stood inside the home, eyes closed, they might imagine they were inside the heart of a living tree, listening to its memories. The floor becomes a surface that welcomes bare feet, smooth but not slippery, warm but not soft. It holds footsteps lightly, without echo, as though respecting the dreams of those who will one day sleep inside. Next comes the hearth. Every ancient home, whether humble or grand, held a fire at its center. It was not just a place for cooking or warmth, it was the soul of the home. The fire was tended with care, and in many traditions it was never allowed to go out. It represented continuity, life, and watchfulness. Even the smallest spark was seen as a companion. The carpenters prepare the space for the hearth with calm deliberation. Stones are gathered and sorted, chosen not for beauty, but for strength and heat resistance. Some stones are flat and smooth, others rugged and strong. They are placed in a gentle arc or circle, forming a cradle for the fire that has not yet been born. The stones touch one another with a muffled click, a sound like pebbles shifting in a stream. Mortar, made from earth and sand, is pressed between them. The carpenter's hands move steadily, with no rush. They know that a good hearth must be solid, patient, and able to hold the heat of countless nights. Once the hearth is formed, a simple opening in the wall allows smoke to drift upward. Not fast, not forceful, just a steady, lazy trail rising like a daydream. In some homes, there were chimneys. In others, the smoke gathered in the rafters and slipped outside through cracks in the roof. Either way, the home learned to breathe. Imagine, for a moment, the sound such a hearth might make. Not roaring, not crackling loudly, just a gentle popping of drying wood, the soft hiss of embers shifting, the occasional sigh of smoke as it curls upward. These sounds are like whispers of comfort, meant not to draw attention, but to reassure. While the hearth settles, the carpenters turn their attention to the interior surfaces. Wooden supports are smoothed further, lintels aligned, and small imperfections brushed away. They are not polishing for beauty, but for harmony. They want nothing sharp, nothing jagged. Everything should be able to catch the light softly and let shadows rest upon it without interruption. The interior begins to feel different now. Not empty, not unfinished. It feels like a place where time can slow. A place where someone might sit quietly, listening to the wind outside, the fire inside, and their own breathing becoming slower and softer. The house has a stillness to it, a patient calm, like a sleeping animal that trusts the world around it. As the carpenters work, they do not disturb this stillness. Their steps are measured. Their tools are set down gingerly. The walls absorb sound, as though they want nothing to frighten away the peace that has settled here. Outside, the sky slips toward evening once again. The blue grows deeper, touched with lavender and dusty gold. Birds settle onto branches. A faint breeze nudges the thatched roof, making it rustle gently, like someone turning in their sleep. The home is not yet complete, but it has begun to dream. With the floors set and the hearth resting like a calm, sleeping heart at the center of the home, the carpenters turn to the last elements that will allow this space to breathe fully. Doors and windows. These are not merely openings, they are thresholds, invitations, and gentle guardians of what lies inside. A house without doors feels exposed, unfinished, uncertain. A house without windows feels asleep, as though unaware of the world. But once both are in place, the structure becomes something alive, capable of greeting the morning and bidding the night farewell. The carpenters choose wood for the door that is sturdy but not heavy. They do not wish for anyone to struggle when entering. A door should move like thought, quietly, smoothly, without effort. The planks are laid side by side, measured, and cut. Wooden pegs again take the place of nails, locking each piece into another with the familiarity of an old embrace. A simple latch is carved. No ornate designs, no harsh metal edges, just a smooth wooden handle, polished so that a palm can rest against it comfortably. The carpenters test the swing of the door. It opens gently, with a sigh rather than a creak. The frame accepts the door, as though it always belonged there. Then, come the windows. Early windows were humble things, not grand panes of clear glass, but simple openings covered with oiled cloth, thin animal hide, or shutters carved by hand. Their purpose was not to invite spectacle, but to invite light, soft light. Light that wanders in without demanding attention. The carpenters measure the size of each opening. They smooth the wooden edges, ensuring no splinter dares greet a curious hand. The shutters, once fitted, pivot silently. When open, they allow the world to enter gently. The scent of nearby grass, the hush of wind drifting through, perhaps a bird's call lingering at the edge of hearing. Imagine, just for a moment, standing inside that quiet room as the first light slips through a newly shaped window. It arrives softly, never as a glare. It spreads itself along the wood grain, highlighting the curves, the knots, the slow stories trapped in the timber. It seems as though the house is smiling for the first time, as though it recognizes that daylight brings purpose. Outside, the shadows of leaves dance along the wall. Their movement is lazy, like clouds drifting across a calm sky. Nothing here is sharp or loud. Even the sun seems to respect the peace of the home, choosing to glow rather than shine. The carpenters move through the house, checking each detail. Sometimes they pause, not because something is wrong, but because silence gives them space to notice what is right. Their work is not about speed. It is about listening to the structure, hearing what it needs, what it lacks, what it already knows. Every adjustment is done with hands that have learned patience. They add simple shelves along one wall. Not many, only enough for jars, small tools, or a treasured item passed down through a family. They plane the wood smooth, and the curls of shavings fall like feathers, gathering quietly at their feet. They place a wooden bench near the hearth, just one plank supported by sturdy legs, but it feels like an invitation to sit, to rest, to watch flames that are not yet lit, to imagine stories that are not yet told. There are no sharp edges here. Everything is softened, rounded, intentional. Even the corners of the hearth hold a gentleness to them, as though the stone itself has accepted the home's quiet nature. By now, if one were to breathe in deeply, they would notice a scent not entirely of wood or earth, but of something subtler, the promise of warmth, of safety, of time moving slowly. The carpenters know this feeling well. It is the moment when a house begins to feel protective, like a shelter offering its first whisper of welcome. Outside, the thatched roof catches the fading light, turning it golden. The shutters rest slightly ajar, listening to the evening wind. The door waits, patient and calm, ready to swing open for whoever may cross its threshold in years to come. Inside, the house is no longer hollow. It is waiting, quietly, confidently, not eager but prepared. Soon, the final touches will arrive. The fire will be lit, the space will breathe warmth, and the home will become what it was always meant to be: a refuge, a resting place, a silent storyteller. For now, though, it rests in perfect stillness, as though suspended between dream and waking. With the doors and windows in place and the rooms shaped into gentle spaces of possibility, the carpenters turn to one of the most ancient and tender moments in the creation of a dwelling: the lighting of the first fire. It is not merely a task, nor a finishing step. It is a quiet ceremony, performed in calm movements, like a whispered promise between wood and flame. The hearth, resting patiently at the center of the home, has waited for this moment. Stones that once felt cool beneath the hands of the builders now seem to hold a quiet anticipation. The carpenters gather small pieces of kindling, twigs no thicker than fingers, scraps shaved from lumber, bits of bark that curl like dried smiles. These pieces are placed in a gentle mound, not thrown, but positioned with care, as though arranging a sleeping nest. They add larger sticks, laying them not in a chaotic pile, but in patterns learned across generations, crossed like open arms, angled so the fire may breathe. Air is the silent partner of flame, and ancient carpenters understood this. They knew how to invite fire, not command it. One carpenter kneels next to the hearth. His hands move slowly, thoughtfully, as he takes out a bow drill, an old tool, simple yet graceful. The bow glides across the spindle, back and forth, in a rhythm as steady as breathing. The wood warms under friction. A thin wisp of smoke curls upward, delicate and unsure, like the first note of a lullaby. No one rushes. No one speaks. Silence wraps itself around the moment like a blanket. At last, a tiny ember appears, no larger than a grain of sand, yet alive with quiet determination. It glows, pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat in miniature. The carpenter lifts it gently into the waiting nest of twigs, breathing onto it with soft, warm air. Each breath is tender, careful, almost parental. The ember brightens, the twigs catch. A flame rises, not a dramatic burst, but a calm unfurling. The fire grows slowly, stretching like someone waking from sleep. It crackles softly, the sound muted and comforting. A whisper of warmth, a promise of protection. Shadows gather around it, but gently, as though they too understand that nothing here must be startled. The fire's light dances over the walls, revealing curves and knots in the timber, touching the shutters with a golden hand, glimmering against the smooth lines of the door. The hearth breathes warmth into the air, and the home, once silent, seems to exhale for the first time. There is a soft scent, a mixture of wood smoke, warm sap, and a quiet hint of earth. The scent settles into the room as though it belongs there. If you closed your eyes, you might imagine evenings spent listening to stories, mornings warmed by embers, and nights where the glow of the fire guides wandering thoughts toward dreams. The carpenters step back and let the fire speak. They do not cheer. They do not declare the house complete. They simply watch, letting the flames settle into themselves. This moment is not an ending. It is a beginning. Houses do not feel finished when the last beam is placed. They feel finished when warmth and purpose enter their walls. Some ancient communities believed that fire was a living guest, one to be respected, fed, and treated gently. It was thought that flames remembered the hands that kindled them. A well-lit hearth was believed to bring calmness, luck, and continuity. Whether or not the carpenters shared such beliefs, they behave as if they do. Quiet, patient, reverent. As the flames spread across the small sticks and embrace the larger logs, the sound becomes steady, like a soft rain tapping on wood, or distant footsteps walking down a corridor of time. The house listens, the house absorbs, the house begins. Outside, twilight settles upon the land. The sky deepens into shades of violet and ash blue. A single star peeks out, shy and faint, as though embarrassed to arrive so early. The wind softens its step, brushing against the walls with a gentleness that suggests approval. Through the shuttered windows, a warm glow leaks into the world. Anyone passing by would know, without hearing a word, that the home is alive now, that it has accepted its purpose. Inside, the fire continues to whisper. It does not need attention. It does not demand anything. It simply offers warmth to the air, and time seems to slow even further, as though the world outside has been paused. The carpenters sit for a moment on the wooden bench they built earlier. They do not need to speak. Their silence says everything, that this home, once a blueprint in the mind, now stands steady and quiet, ready for the stories of those who will live here. Eventually, the carpenters rise, gather their tools, and step toward the door. But something subtle remains behind. Not the tools, not the wood shavings, but the sense that the house itself is listening, breathing, waiting. The home is not anymore. A house may stand with doors and windows, with walls and a fire, yet it is not truly lived in until the small, humble things arrive. The things made not to impress, but to serve. These objects carry the rhythm of daily life, and in ancient homes, they were shaped with the same care given to beams and rafters. They were not decorations. They were companions. Morning arrives softly the next day, and the golden light spills through the shutters again, this time falling on tools that are no longer needed. The carpenters return, not to build walls or shape roofs, but to place in the home the pieces that transform space into comfort. They begin with a table. The table is simple, broad enough to share meals and tasks, sturdy enough to endure countless seasons. The wood used here comes from the heart of a tree, dense and patient. The carpenters run their hands over its surface, feeling the faint ripples of the grain, lines like gentle waves frozen in time. The table is placed near the hearth, where warmth will gather in winter and morning light will rest in summer. Next comes a set of stools, 3 or 4, depending on the imagined family. They sit quietly around the table, like listeners waiting for stories. Each stool is slightly different, because no tree grows in perfect symmetry. The carpenters do not hide this. Instead, they allow each seat to hold its own quiet character. Against the wall, they position a wooden chest. It is small, but strong, meant to protect the household's most precious items, perhaps linens, tools, or something sentimental, like a hand-carved spoon or a bundle of dried herbs. The lid closes softly. No harsh sound, no jarring snap, just a muted thump like the closing of a book.